Let's bring in, for a little bit more insight, Anthony Ganji, who's a corrections professional and author, as well as host of Tier Talk on YouTube, as well as Kat Bigney, a survival consultant and anthropologist. Anthony and Kat, thank you both for being here. I know you were listening in to that press conference as well, Anthony. So let's start with you. So many questions here. First of all, on how Burham was able to escape. We know he used exercise equipment to gain access to the roof. He used bed sheets to then climb down. How unusual of an escape is this, and how was he able to access all of these supplies and what he needed to even get up on the roof?
Yeah, this is actually very unusual. I mean, usually these areas, especially the yard, has high oversight. I mean, the biggest concern here right now could be staffing. The inmate could have seen a weakness and acted on impulse, or it could have been planned because he discovered a weakness and then basically realized maybe these areas aren't properly covered. When I first heard of this situation, the first thing I think about is what type of staffing do we have in these areas? What would allow an inmate into yard with sheets? And then making sure that they're like, who would allow someone to mount up the gym equipment to get to an area where they could breach the wall. So the first thing I see is lack of oversight, but I don't want to fault the facility just yet, because I don't know what their staffing concerns are, because lately the biggest concern is that a lot of facilities across the country are understaffed and they're kind of running daily operations with very limited staffing. So some posts or some areas get sacrificed, sadly.
Right, yeah, absolutely. And as you said, there's so many questions we still just don't have answers to. We need more information. Kat, I'll throw it over to you. This Michael Burham, known for being a survivalist, that's how he describes himself. Talk about the kind of surroundings that he's dealing with. We know it's near the Allegheny National Forest. What does that mean as far as survivalist skills?
Well, I mean, first of all, you should note that not only does he have a military background, but also survival skills, but those are the things that make him the most dangerous in this situation. He is resourceful, he's innovative, and also smart, and he's paying attention to his environment and finding weaknesses. And that is going to translate to the natural world. So if he already has somewhat of a skill set, he's going to be able to use whatever he finds. If he has, stockpiles or whatever already set up, he's planned this. And he's going to be able to use these raw resources to survive. And that makes him really dangerous, because he's not someone that's going to be crippled by the natural environment. He's going to have a plan. If he's out for a long period of time, there may be some pinches that authorities can make, but they're going to have to consider really putting that pressure on. So if he can be calculated and he has time to plan, he's of course going to find ways to camouflage himself, ways to evade authorities. But if he's under pressure, if he has to move quickly, that's where he's going to make mistakes and reveal his location. So he's in a really user-friendly environment for now.
Absolutely. And as you said, if he's had time to plan this and think about it, and he's not panicking, he's not making those decisions based on panic. So, Kat, we want to talk about the threat to people in the area. But before we get to that, let's just talk about the threat that Burham, potentially poses for law enforcement. When we have somebody who is comfortable in the natural environment, is comfortable camouflaging himself, as you said.
Well, and right now, because it is such a nice time of year, if he can stay camouflaged for a while, he can continue to build resources, so he could really stay out for, a year. He could live for a long time out in this wilderness environment if he has time to plan and prepare, and especially if he has resources like people helping him. So I think he is a real threat at this point, because he has knowledge, he's innovative, he's resourceful, he has stockpiles, and he's in a really forgiving area. I think he poses a huge threat, too, if he's armed and dangerous, because not only can he hurt people, but he also has the ability to hunt. So, that hunger factor is not going to weigh in at all. So he is, and it would be interesting to bring in individuals that have some similar military training, or people that have experience in search and rescue or evasion, maybe bringing in canine crews, thinking outside of the box on this one, because you're dealing with someone that's so skilled and has a lot of forethought into what he's doing.
Thank you for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find News Nation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of News Nation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.